My name is Marcus Thompson, and at 26, I thought I had finally found my dream job. After 4 years of grinding through late nights and weekend projects at smaller tech companies, I landed a senior developer position at Meridian Solutions, a mid-sized software firm in Austin. The salary was incredible, the benefits were solid, and my new team seemed genuinely excited to work with someone who had experience in machine learning implementations. For the first 2 months, everything felt perfect. I was reporting directly to the CTO, David Walsh, who had recruited me personally after seeing my work on an open-source project that had gained some attention in the industry. My colleagues, Emma, Jake, and Priya, were brilliant, collaborative, and hungry to push boundaries. We were working on a revolutionary inventory management system that could potentially save companies millions in waste and inefficiency. Then corporate restructuring happened. The company hired Rebecca Morrison as our new engineering manager, supposedly to streamline operations and improve team dynamics. Rebecca was in her early 40s, had an MBA from Wharton, and made sure everyone knew it within her first week. She wore expensive suits, carried herself with the kind of confidence that bordered on arrogance, and had a way of looking at you like she was calculating your net worth. During our first team meeting, she spent 20 minutes talking about her previous role at a prestigious Fortune 500 company and her proven track record of optimizing team performance. Then she looked directly at me and said, "I'm excited to work with such a young and eager team." Sometimes fresh perspectives need proper guidance to reach their full potential. The way she emphasized young made my stomach tighten. Emma shot me a concerned glance across the conference table. I tried to brush it off. Maybe I was being paranoid. After all, she was new, probably just trying to establish authority. But then she started making little comments. "Marcus, are you sure you've thought this through completely? During code reviews, let's have someone with more experience handle the client presentation." Small digs that felt like paper cuts, each one seemingly innocent, but collectively forming a pattern that made me question whether this was going to work out. The micromanagement begins. Within 2 weeks of Rebecca's arrival, my work life transformed from collaborative innovation to suffocating oversight. She instituted mandatory check-ins, 30-minute meetings every other day where I had to justify every line of code I'd written and explain my decision-making process in excruciating detail. "Marcus, I noticed you chose to implement the search algorithm using a binary tree structure," she'd say, peering at my screen through her designer glasses. "At my previous company, we found that hash tables were more efficient for this type of operation. Are you certain this is the best approach?" The thing was, I had considered hash tables. I'd run benchmarks, analyzed memory usage, and determined that the binary tree was optimal for our specific use case due to the nature of our data and query patterns. But explaining this felt like defending a dissertation to someone who had already made up her mind. The micromanagement extended beyond technical decisions. She started requiring written justifications for any code changes, insisted on approving all my direct communications with other departments, and began scheduling my tasks in 15-minute increments. Meanwhile, Emma, Jake, and Priya, all of whom were actually younger than me, but somehow escaped this level of scrutiny, continued working with the autonomy they'd always enjoyed. During one particularly frustrating check-in, I finally asked, "Rebecca, is there something specific about my work quality that's concerning you? Because my performance reviews have always been excellent, and I'm meeting all my deadlines." She smiled, that condescending smile I was beginning to hate. "Marcus, I'm not questioning your technical abilities. I'm simply ensuring that someone at your career stage receives appropriate guidance. Leadership requires experience, and experience takes time to develop." Career stage. There it was again, the subtle implication that I was too young, too inexperienced, too naive to be trusted with real responsibility. Never mind that I'd been coding since I was 12, had contributed to major open source projects, or that David Walsh had specifically recruited me for my expertise. That evening, I called my girlfriend Ashley to vent. She's treating me like an intern, I complained. And the worst part is, she's doing it so professionally that I can't even call her out without sounding paranoid. Ashley listened patiently before asking, "Have you talked to David about this?" I hadn't. David was busy with upper management, and complaining about my new boss after just 2 weeks felt like career suicide. I decided to stick it out, prove myself through sheer competence, and hope Rebecca would eventually back off. I was naive to think it would be that simple. The isolation campaign by month 3, Rebecca had perfected the art of professional isolation. She restructured our team meetings so that instead of our collaborative brainstorming sessions, we now had structured presentations, where each team member had to formally present their progress to the group. Somehow, my time slot was always scheduled for Friday at 4:30 p.m., when half the team was already mentally checked out for the weekend. The real blow came when she announced the formation of a senior development committee, a group that would make key architectural decisions for our flagship project. Emma, Jake, and Priya were all invited to join. I was not. The committee needs individuals who can provide mature, seasoned perspectives, Rebecca explained during our next check-in. I think you'll benefit more from focusing on implementation rather than high-level strategy right now. Implementation. Like I was some junior developer fresh out of a coding bootcamp. What made it worse was watching my teammates' discomfort. They knew this was wrong. Emma had been at the company for only 18 months compared to my various projects spanning 6 years in the industry. Jake had literally asked me for help on advanced algorithms just the week before. But they were also smart enough to recognize the political dynamics at play. During lunch, Emma pulled me aside. "This is bullshit, Marcus. You know more about machine learning than all of us combined." "I know," I said, stabbing at my salad. "But what can I do? If I complain, I look like a whiny kid who can't handle authority." "Have you documented any of this?" I hadn't. In the moment, each individual incident seemed too small, too subjective to report. It was death by 1,000 cuts. No single action was egregious enough to warrant a formal complaint, but collectively they were destroying my role and reputation. That's when Rebecca made her next move. She scheduled a meeting with David Walsh, ostensibly to discuss team optimization strategies. I wasn't invited, of course. The next day, David stopped by my desk with a concerned expression. "Marcus, Rebecca mentioned that you might be feeling overwhelmed with some of the senior-level responsibilities. She suggested we might want to reassign the ML implementation to Emma's team and have you focus on the user interface components." My blood went cold. The machine learning system was my baby. I designed it. I'd spent months researching the optimal approaches, and I was 3 weeks away from a major breakthrough. The UI work, while important, was essentially busy work that any competent developer could handle. "David, I'm not overwhelmed," I said carefully. "The ML system is on track, and I'm confident in the approach we're taking." He looked uncomfortable. "I'm sure you are, but Rebecca has concerns about the complexity and timeline. She thinks a more experienced developer might be able to streamline the process." More experienced. There it was again. The constant drumbeat that I was too young, too inexperienced, too risky for important work. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to document everything that happened from here on out. I was going to fight back. The breaking point came during our quarterly review cycle. I had been expecting a standard performance evaluation, maybe some constructive feedback, discussion of goals, the usual corporate formalities. Instead, I walked into Rebecca's office to find her sitting with a stack of papers and the kind of serious expression that meant bad news. "Marcus, I've been reviewing your performance over the past 3 months, and I have some significant concerns." She began, sliding a document across her desk. "Your communication skills need improvement. Your ability to work within established frameworks has been inconsistent. And frankly, your attitude toward feedback has been resistant." I stared at the performance improvement plan in front of me. a formal document that was essentially a precursor to termination. According to Rebecca's assessment, I was failing to meet expectations in collaboration, technical leadership, and professional development. She had twisted every interaction we'd had into evidence of my incompetence. "This doesn't reflect reality," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "My code quality metrics are above team average, I've met every deadline, and I've contributed significantly to our core projects." "Marcus, this is exactly what I'm talking about," Rebecca replied with that same condescending tone. "Your inability to accept constructive criticism is part of the problem. Sometimes we need to step back and honestly assess whether we're ready for the responsibilities we think we deserve." The implication was clear. I was an arrogant young developer who couldn't handle being managed by someone with real experience. She had carefully constructed a narrative that painted my competence as overconfidence and my expertise as inexperience. The PIP gave me 60 days to show significant improvement in areas so subjectively defined that she could fail me regardless of my actual performance. Worse, it required me to attend weekly mentoring sessions with Rebecca herself, essentially formalizing the micromanagement that had been strangling my productivity. "I need you to understand," Rebecca continued, "that this company values team players who can grow within our established culture. If you're not prepared to embrace that growth mindset, then perhaps this isn't the right fit." That evening, I sat in my apartment staring at the PIP document, feeling more defeated than I'd ever felt in my career. Ashley found me there 2 hours later, still in my work clothes, still holding the papers. "They're trying to force me out," I told her. "She's constructed this whole narrative that I'm incompetent, and now it's officially documented." Ashley read through the document, her expression growing angrier with each page. "Marcus, this is insane. You're one of the most skilled developers I know. Remember when you fixed that critical bug at your last company that saved them from a major data breach? Remember the open source project that got you this job in the first place?" She was right. I had let 3 months of systematic undermining make me forget my own worth. I had been so focused on trying to prove myself within Rebecca's framework that I'd lost sight of my actual capabilities and accomplishments. "I'm not going to let her destroy my career," I said finally. "If she wants to play games, I'll show her what real strategy looks like." That night, I started planning my counterattack. Building my case the next morning, I came to work with a new mindset. Instead of trying to defend myself against Rebecca's criticisms, I was going to systematically document everything while building an undeniable case for my competence. First, I reached out to my contacts at my previous companies and requested formal letters of recommendation. Within a week, I had glowing references from 3 former managers, including specific examples of my technical leadership and problem-solving abilities. I also gathered metrics from my previous roles: code quality scores, project completion rates, client satisfaction ratings, all of which painted a picture of consistent high performance. Next, I started meticulously documenting every interaction with Rebecca. I bought a small notebook and wrote down the date, time, and exact words of every criticism, every micromanagement directive, every condescending comment. I also began following up on our verbal conversations with email summaries. "Hi Rebecca, just to confirm our discussion this morning, you mentioned that you'd like me to rewrite the authentication module because you feel the current approach is too complex. I want to make sure I understand your specific concerns." The email trail served 2 purposes. It created a paper trail of her unreasonable demands, and it forced her to either put her vague criticisms in writing or back down from them. I also reconnected with David Walsh. Instead of complaining about Rebecca directly, I focused on sharing my technical achievements and expressing enthusiasm for challenging projects. During one casual conversation, I mentioned the machine learning breakthrough I'd achieved. A 40% improvement in processing efficiency that could save the company significant money. "That's impressive work," David said, looking genuinely surprised. I hadn't heard about those results. "I've been documenting everything in my weekly reports to Rebecca. I replied carefully. Maybe they got lost in the restructuring shuffle. The truth was, Rebecca had been minimizing my contributions in her reports to upper management. She'd been taking credit for my team's overall performance, while highlighting every minor setback as evidence of my inadequacy. But my most important discovery came from an unexpected source. During lunch with Emma, she mentioned something that made my blood run cold. "You know, it's weird," she said. "Rebecca asked me so many questions about you during my first one-on-one with her. Like really personal stuff about your background, your previous jobs, whether I thought you were mature enough for leadership responsibilities." What kind of questions? She wanted to know if you'd ever managed people before, if you had formal management training, stuff like that. But then she asked about your age, whether you seemed settled in your career. It felt really inappropriate. Age discrimination. That was the piece I'd been missing. Rebecca wasn't just micromanaging me because she disliked my work. She had decided from day one that I was too young for my role, and everything since then had been a systematic campaign to justify that bias. I started researching employment law and discovered that age discrimination wasn't limited to protecting older workers. Systematically targeting someone for being too young for responsibilities they were qualified for could also constitute illegal discrimination. That weekend, I compiled everything into a comprehensive document. The performance data that contradicted Rebecca's assessments, the email trail showing her unreasonable demands, witness accounts of her inappropriate questions about my age, and evidence that she was treating me differently than other team members with similar or less experience. On Monday morning, I scheduled a meeting with HR. The Confrontation HR Director, Jennifer Martinez, listened to my presentation with the kind of professional poker face that made it impossible to gauge her reaction. I had prepared for this meeting like it was a client pitch, complete with a PowerPoint presentation and supporting documentation. "This is quite comprehensive," she said finally, flipping through the printed copies of my evidence. "I appreciate you bringing this to my attention in such a detailed manner. I want to be clear," I said. "I'm not asking you to fire Rebecca or take any dramatic action. I just want to be evaluated fairly based on my actual performance, not on assumptions about my age or experience level." Jennifer nodded thoughtfully. "I'm going to need to investigate these claims thoroughly. That means I'll be speaking with Rebecca, with your team members, and with David Walsh. Are you prepared for this to become a formal process?" The question hung in the air. Once I said yes, there would be no going back. This would either vindicate me or destroy what remained of my career at Meridian Solutions. "Yes," I said. "I'm prepared." Over the next 2 weeks, Jennifer conducted her investigation. I knew something was happening because Rebecca's behavior shifted dramatically. She became overly friendly, started praising my work in emails, and even suggested I take on some additional responsibilities. It was transparent damage control, but it also validated everything I documented. The breaking point came during a team meeting where Rebecca was presenting our quarterly results to the broader engineering department. She was highlighting our team's achievements when David Walsh interrupted with a question. "Rebecca, can you tell us more about the machine learning optimization that resulted in the 40% efficiency improvement?" That's a significant breakthrough. Rebecca hesitated for just a moment too long. Yes, that was a team effort. We collaborated extensively on optimizing the algorithms. "Actually," I said, my voice steady and professional, "I'd be happy to walk through the technical details." The breakthrough came from implementing a novel ensemble method that combines gradient boosting with neural architecture search. The room fell silent. Rebecca's face went pale as I continued explaining the technical implementation. Details that made it obvious I had designed and built this system personally. David was taking notes, clearly impressed, while Rebecca sat frozen in her chair. After the meeting, David approached me privately. "Marcus, why haven't I been hearing about these kinds of innovations in Rebecca's reports?" "I'm not sure," I replied diplomatically. "I've been documenting everything in my weekly updates." That afternoon, Jennifer called me into her office. "Marcus, I've completed my investigation, and I need to discuss the findings with you. She had discovered everything. Email threads where Rebecca had complained to other managers about my immaturity. Records showing that she had systematically excluded me from important meetings while including less experienced team members. Most damning, she had found the notes from Rebecca's initial conversation with David where she had explicitly stated that she thought I was too young for my current role and needed to be managed down to a more appropriate level. What happens now? I asked. Rebecca will be transitioning to a different role within the company, Jennifer said carefully. One where she won't have direct reports. And David Walsh has requested that you report directly to him again, effective immediately. I felt a surge of vindication mixed with exhaustion. What about my performance improvement plan? Jennifer slid a document across her desk. Officially rescinded. Your actual performance metrics show you're exceeding expectations in every category. As I walked back to my desk, I saw Rebecca clearing out her office. She looked up as I passed, and for a moment, I saw something that might have been regret in her eyes. Marcus, she said quietly. For what it's worth, you're a talented developer. I stopped and turned back to her. Rebecca, talent was never the issue. The issue was that you decided who I was before you ever got to know what I could do. She didn't have an answer for that. The sweet victory the weeks following Rebecca's departure felt like emerging from a fog I hadn't realized was suffocating me. David Walsh called me into his office on my first day reporting to him again, and the contrast with Rebecca's management style was immediately apparent. Marcus, I owe you an apology, he began. I should have been more aware of what was happening on your team. Rebecca presented a very different picture of your performance than what I'm seeing in the actual data. He spread out several reports on his desk. Performance metrics, code quality assessments, and peer reviews that painted a picture of consistent excellence. According to this, you've been one of our top performers for the entire time Rebecca was managing you. Your machine learning implementation alone is going to save us hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. Thank you for taking the time to look at the real numbers, I said. There's something else, David continued. I'm restructuring the development teams, and I want you to lead the new Advanced Analytics division. It would mean managing a team of 5 developers and having direct input on our technical strategy. The irony wasn't lost on me. Rebecca had spent months arguing that I was too young and inexperienced for leadership responsibilities, and now I was being offered exactly the kind of role she had insisted I wasn't ready for. I'd be honored, I said. The promotion was announced company-wide the following week. The email from David highlighted my technical achievements and leadership potential, specifically mentioning the machine learning breakthrough that had impressed the executive team. I watched as congratulatory messages flooded in from colleagues across different departments, people who had known about my work but hadn't realized it was being systematically minimized by my former manager. Emma, Jake, and Priya were genuinely excited for me, but I could also see relief in their expressions. They had watched me being slowly marginalized and hadn't known how to help without risking their own positions. I'm so glad you fought back, Emma told me during lunch. Watching what she was doing to you was awful, but we didn't know how to support you without making things worse. You supported me by being witnesses to what was actually happening, I replied. That mattered more than you know. The best part was the reaction from the rest of the engineering department. Word had gotten around about the investigation and Rebecca's departure, and I noticed a shift in how people interacted with me. Instead of the polite but distant professionalism I'd grown accustomed to under Rebecca's management, colleagues were seeking out my opinions on technical decisions and inviting me to strategy meetings. But the moment that felt like the sweetest vindication came 3 weeks later. I was presenting our quarterly results to the executive team. The same presentation that Rebecca had tried to take credit for my work. This time, I was the one standing at the front of the room, walking the leadership team through the technical innovations that were driving significant cost savings and efficiency improvements. Marcus, asked the CEO, What's your projection for scaling this technology across our other product lines? I had prepared for this question, and my answer outlined a comprehensive strategy for expanding the machine learning capabilities across the entire company. As I spoke, I could see the executives taking notes and nodding with approval. After the presentation, David pulled me aside. That was impressive. I think we need to talk about your long-term career trajectory here. 6 months ago, I had been a senior developer being managed down by someone who thought I was too young for responsibility. Now I was being asked to help shape the technical future of the entire company. The career trajectory conversation led to another surprise. Meridian Solutions wanted to sponsor me for an advanced machine learning certification program at MIT, with the understanding that I would return to lead their new AI research division. As I signed the paperwork for the program, I thought about Rebecca's final comment to me. She had said I was talented, as if that had never been in question. But talent without opportunity is just potential. What she had tried to take from me wasn't my abilities, it was the chance to use them. The lasting impact. A year later, I was finishing my certification program at MIT when I received an unexpected email. It was from Rebecca Morrison, and the subject line simply read, "Congratulations, Marcus," the email began. "I saw the article about your AI research division in TechCrunch. I wanted to reach out to congratulate you on your success and to offer a sincere apology for how I managed our working relationship. I've spent this year in therapy and professional coaching, trying to understand my own biases and management failures. I realize now that my treatment of you was driven by my own insecurities about working with someone whose technical skills exceeded my own. You deserve better leadership. And I'm sorry I couldn't provide that. I hope you'll accept my apology, even though I understand if you can't." I stared at the email for a long time before responding. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Why should I make her feel better about her behavior? But another part of me recognized that this wasn't really about her anymore. "Rebecca," I wrote back, "I appreciate your apology. What happened between us taught me valuable lessons about standing up for myself and documenting everything. I hope you've learned something from it too. I wish you well in your future endeavors." The truth was, Rebecca's systematic attempt to undermine me had ultimately made me stronger. Fighting back had forced me to clearly articulate my value and advocate for myself in ways I'd never had to before. Those skills served me well as I built my new team and navigated the politics of leading a high-profile research division. The Advanced Analytics division grew from 5 developers to 25 over the course of 18 months. Our innovations were being implemented across multiple product lines, and we had 3 patents pending on algorithms I had developed. More importantly, I had created the kind of collaborative, merit-based environment that I had wished for during those dark months under Rebecca's management. During team meetings, I made sure everyone's contributions were acknowledged. When presenting to executives, I was careful to highlight individual achievements rather than taking credit for the team's collective work. And when hiring new team members, I focused entirely on their skills and potential, not on whether they seemed mature enough or fit some arbitrary profile of what a senior developer should look like. The lesson that stuck with me most wasn't about age discrimination or workplace politics. It was about the importance of recognizing your own worth and being willing to fight for it. I had almost let Rebecca's narrative become my reality, almost accepted that maybe I was too young, too inexperienced, too something to deserve the opportunities I had earned. But competence speaks for itself, and results don't lie. The machine learning system I had designed was still running, still saving the company money, still proving that good ideas can come from anyone regardless of their age or background. 6 months ago, I received another email that made me smile. It was from a recent computer science graduate named Tyler Johnson. He had read about our AI research division and was interested in an internship opportunity. "I know I don't have much professional experience," his email said, "but I'm passionate about machine learning and willing to work hard to prove myself. I hope you'll consider giving me a chance." I scheduled an interview with him immediately. During our conversation, it became clear that Tyler had impressive technical skills and genuine enthusiasm for the work we were doing. His age, 22, never entered into my evaluation. "When can you start?" I asked at the end of the interview. "Really?" he said, his face lighting up. "You're offering me the position. Tyler, I'm offering you the opportunity to prove what you can do. Based on our conversation, I think you're going to do great things here." As I watched him walk out of the office, practically bouncing with excitement, I thought about the difference between Rebecca's approach and mine. She had seen my youth as a liability to be managed. I saw Tyler's youth as potential to be nurtured. That's the real victory that came out of my experience with Rebecca Morrison. Not just that I survived her attempts to undermine me, but that I learned how to create the kind of environment where talent is recognized and developed regardless of where it comes from. The impossible machine I had fixed wasn't just the broken algorithm in that quarterly presentation. It was the entire system that allowed bias and insecurity to masquerade as management expertise. And in fixing it, I had helped build something better for everyone who came after me. The janitor's son in the story I had read online had fixed a $6 million machine and changed a company's future. I had fixed something arguably more valuable. A culture that almost wasted human potential because of arbitrary assumptions about age and experience. Sometimes, the most important victories aren't about proving other people wrong. They're about proving to yourself what you're capable of when you refuse to accept limitations that others try to place on you. Tyler Johnson started the following Monday, and I made sure he knew that his ideas would be heard, his contributions would be recognized, and his potential would be respected. Because that's what good leadership looks like, and I had learned it not from Rebecca's example, but from everything she had taught me not to do. The cycle was complete, but the story was just beginning. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Everyday Life Stories community. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world.